Hey guys, it's Jason here from the Omni Sales team. And do you struggle to actually understand land and what problems land have? Like, do your builders or do your estimators, to the clients, to the developers, do they keep saying things to you and you're like, what does that mean or why does that affect me? In today's video, we're going to be going through 10 possible issues on a block of land so you guys have a little bit more knowledge and you're armed to be able to discuss this with your clients. Again, the level of detail I'm going to go into for each one is more of the conversation or the understanding a client needs to have. So guys, grab a pen and paper, take some notes on this one. This one you can't afford to miss. Let's get into it. So today's video, we're looking at land problems and what the dollars they're going to cost us are. Because all of these issues, if the client has one of these issues on the board, that's going to be an additional price that might not be factored in or you might not be aware of yet. So let's break them down. Number one is soil condition. Simply put, soil condition is how much the soil moves when it gets wet. So as a soil gets hydrated, it expands. As it dehydrates or as it dries out, it condenses. So in very humid areas or very tropical areas, what we tend to find is the soil gets wet a lot of the time and therefore expansion occurs. When we go to super dry areas, the land tends to be quite dehydrated and it doesn't really have the same effect. But for most clients, the understanding that they need to have is that, guys, so if I'm talking to the client, guys, depending on how much that soil expands and contracts, how much movement that happens, you got to imagine your house is on top of all that moving soil. And if one side of your soil is moving and the other side of your house, the soil isn't, it's going to create anomalies in the slab and in the house design. We need to make sure that we have structural integrity to put up with those movements. So the first condition that is going to affect lots of people is the different types of soil grades. Now, when you look at the different types of soil grades, we have S, M, H1, H2, E, P. All of these particular soil grades are going to invoke a different cost, and they have a different meaning and a different thickness of the slab that we need to put on. So simply put, the soil condition, what we're trying to understand is how much movement the soil has. And based on how much movement it is, we're going to have to make the concrete slab that your house sits on thicker depending on that movement. That's what the soil condition is. And obviously, the more concrete we use, the more cost because we're using more material. So that's why the price goes up if it's a worse type of soil. Obviously, if it's a worse type of soil and there's more movement, there's more likely for the house to crack over time. And we need to make sure we engineer safely so that your home will last 50 years or 100 years or whatever the warranties are. So that's the soil condition number one. Second type is topography. What is topography? Topography is the slope and the undulation of land. So not all land is dead flat. When you go and look at a mountainside that a land developer is going to develop, it's a mountain or it might be a field that goes like this. The developers will quite often make the land flat, but if you're looking at just a raw block of land, quite often there's some sort of slope. And in order for us to build a concrete, we needed to be on dead flat land, and we need to make sure your land is flat. So we're going to have to cut and fill. So this is what we talk about with cut and filling, is we need to make sure that that land is dead flat. Now, obviously, there's some builders that build on stumps. We build split level homes. It's a different type of construction, but the best way to build on a block of land is flat land because it's the cheapest building method. We don't have to put extra piering, we don't have to put safety measures, we don't have to build retaining walls, etc. So that is land topography. The other thing with land topography that we want to understand is that it also can't be dead flat. If your land is dead flat and it rains on your land, we can't get the water off your land and we can't drain the land properly. So there has to be some sort of fall to your drain pits, and then those drain pits have to be able to fall to the street or to some sort of waste disposal area, because that's essential for making sure your home doesn't flood due to just regular rain. Number three is rock. Rock is a massive one for a lot of builders and for a lot of people. Because you can't physically know and you can't test every single square meter of your block of land, you might hit a rock during construction. Now, some builders are fixing their price that they'll take on board that price. Some builders don't. And if they hit rock on site, they're going to charge the client. But the understanding of what rock is understanding that when you dig down, obviously, if you hit a massive boulder underground, you're going to have to excavate that boulder because we can't screw piers in. We can't send piping through rocks. So that rock's going to get excavated out. And then when you excavate all of that rock out, depending on how big it is, you might have to fill it in with soil and recompact it down. Those things drive costs up because to get a rock out, you need special machinery. You don't have to get the rock taken away, and then you have to bring soil in to fill that hole, depending, again, how big the rock is. But that is why rock is a massive issue when it comes to land cost and construction costs. Number four is access. Guys, with blocks getting smaller and smaller, there's legislation that requires us to have a bin, a toilet, and a driveway for us to be able to get on and off the block, and then all the construction materials to be able to be left on site. Like if you're looking at a 10 meter block, a 10 by 30 meter block, and your house is like 8.5 or 9 meters by 28, there's not a lot of land left to be able to put those things on. So when we talk about access or tight access, we might have to do extra deliveries. We might have to get crane hire in. We might have to have more bins being taken away because the bin is smaller because it's a smaller block, but we're using the same amount of construction material, particularly if we're doing a double story home. But all of those things due to access is going to drive the cost up. Again, if we're building on these really small inner city blocks and we're building double story homes, we need to get scaffolding down the side so that it's safe for our workers. Now, normal scaffolding is a certain width and we need an area for our wheelbarrows and people to be able to go around. If you've only got 1 meter, you got to get super thin scaffolding to be able to get up and down. And that scaffolding just costs more than regular scaffolding. So that's the point we're getting at, is access is going to drive prices up as well. Next one is mining overlays. So we're going to get into overlays now. If there was ever a mine under or around the development that you're building in, if there was ever mining around where you used to build or where your home is, those are going to drive your prices up as well. Because if you think there's a massive hole underneath your land somewhere, like it might be 100 meters deep or a kilometer deep, but there's a massive hole. If for some reason that land falls in, you're going to have all of that land above it fall in as well. And we call this a zone of influence that goes out. And anything on top of that land could fall into the hole or could regress or could sink. And so when we see sinkholes, that's quite often what happens around mining areas, is one of the mines collapse, soil falls in, and anything above that falls with it, and you get a sinkhole. Now, if your home happens to be over that sinkhole, obviously your home's going to fall into that hole. So if there's mining, there's special requirements that are required to make sure that we've engineered where the house can be like counterbalanced on some part of the land. It can be offset on other parts. There's a bunch of different requirements for mining overlays, but mining is a massive one. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the video, but every day people are reaching out asking, Jason, how can we do sales training with you? So if you're in new home construction, if you've just started, if you're a seasoned pro, even if you're the #1 sales consultant at your company, every single one of us need a coach to get to that next level. So if that sounds like someone like you, click on the link in the description right now. It's going to ask for your name, your number, and a simple opt-in message to say I can give you a call. But if you want to skip past that entirely, simply text the number on the screen right now, 0427 915 668. Just text me a question, guys, and I'll jump on a call and have a chat with you right now. But guys, I hope you're enjoying the video. Let's get back to it. Next one is flooding. Obviously, if there's any flood overlays, this is a massive one for Ipswich in Queensland and Brisbane. We get a lot of flooding in those areas. And when you're building in those areas, we need to make sure that we build the home above what's called, in Queensland, it's called a Q100 level. So in the last 100 years, any floods, we have to be a meter above that. It's called a Q100. There's certain requirements that we have to be to make sure that we avoid flooding. So again, the way you're selling this to your client, you're just like, guys, obviously we can't have your house flood. We need to make sure, and the government needs to make sure, because if there's massive insurance claims made, the government is setting these rules so we don't have that much issue or impact on people. So we need to be above the flood line. Next one, bushfire. Australia's notorious for this. We see our catastrophic bushfire signs everywhere. Obviously, if there's bushfire warnings or BAL ratings, these are important as well. Now, what is a BAL? A BAL is a bushfire attack level rating. So it's a bushfire attack level rating. Now, there's different levels. You've probably seen 12 low, BAL low, 12.5, 19, 29, 40. Essentially, what these BAL levels ratings are giving us is not the likelihood of the fire actually touching your house. The fire should never touch your home because that's what we call a flame zone. And there's a lot of builders that just won't build in a flame zone. But I want you to imagine, and this is how I explain to clients, I want you to imagine you're standing around a fire, yeah? Like a nice bonfire or something like that. And when you put your hands closer to the fire, you can feel the heat quite heavy. But if I take my hands back like half a meter, it's much cooler. And then obviously my body's a lot cooler. And if I move my body in, I can feel the heat. The same concept happens when there's a huge bushfire. The bushfire itself is producing all of this heat that gets radiated away from the bushfire. Depending how close your house is or to that bushfire is going to be how much heat that house is going to receive. Now, on a BAL 12.5, for an example, one of the things we need is bushfire-prone seals that go around our windows. The reason we need these is because you're close enough to a bushfire where the heat's quite intense, what it does is it can melt those little rubber seals that go around your windows. And if those rubber seals melt away, the window will just fall out. So there's certain requirements that we're doing to make sure that the home is capable of withstanding the heat of being close to a bushfire. So again, this one's a little bit more in depth, but That's understanding why bushfire level ratings are going to affect the price of your home, because the builder's going to have to put extra requirements in. Next, easements. Easements are a council requirement. So an easement can be for a multitude of reasons. When the land developer was developing all of the land, so they have like, let's say a 1 hectare block and they're breaking it into 1 acre blocks or 1,000 square meter blocks, what they quite often will need is a sewer line to go along all the back of the blocks to be able to get the sewer, to be able to get the waste off the land and into the main sewer lines. They might put like an easement along the back of your block where that sewer line is, because if the council ever needs to go in and repair a sewer line, they can't have like a concrete structure or something over the top of that line. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to get in and fix the problem. So an easement, it can be for a multitude of reasons, but a service easement is a very popular one. Driveway easements. So if you're building in a battle axe block and you're the block at the front, quite often a part of your land might be cut off where you can't build on because it's a driveway to get down to the back. A lot of the time, the easements are for people to be able to access a certain part of the land that was required when they were developing the land or required for maintaining the land future. The other type of easements you can get are flood easements. You can get bushfire, you can get koala sanctuary easements, or wildlife easements. So if you're building on acreage, when the developers were making the deal with the council about what kind of land to build on, they might have sectioned a certain part of your land off where you can't build on because they want to maintain gum trees and koala habitats and all sorts of stuff. But that's what easements are. Zoning. So depending on what zoning you're in could dictate what kind of house you can build. So for an example, if you're wanting to build a granny flat or a second dwelling and you're building on a 1,000 square meter block close to a city, they might not let it because they have zoned it as just pure residential. Where if you go into rural or semi-rural areas, they may allow you to build that additional dwelling because you have a lot more land. So zoning, it can affect the construction costs because it might change the kind of house you have to build. And then finally on this list, I put covenant. The covenant is a massive one to understand because this is the one the client actually signs off when they buy from a land developer. Every land developer out there wants to charge premium for their block of land. Am I right? Obviously, they're developing land, they want the most money they can get. So the way that they can justify overcharging their land compared to a block down the road is they create something called a covenant. Now, a covenant is simply a set of rules, restrictions, and guidelines that the people who buy that land must follow when they're building the home. Now, the question you asked, Jason, how loosely or how strict are certain developers? That's each developer's decision. The point of the covenant is that every home has to be built to a certain level. Now, if every home is built to that level, it protects the investment of everyone who buys in there. So you can charge a little bit more because you can say when you're selling this block of land, hey guys, we've made this estate purely a double-story estate. So everyone who signed a contract to buy a block of land must build a double-story. So if you're building a beautiful double-story, the person next to you can't build a tiny little bungalow and can't try and off-sell that as an investment because they've already signed a contract saying they have to build double-story. That's just an example of a covenant requirement. Now, you'll find a lot of developments when you go around your areas, the covenants are very similar a lot of the time. They need 2 materials to the front. They need some sort of facade that highlights and emphasizes the front of the house. They want some sort of gardening. They might want solar panels. They might want water tanks hidden. There's a bunch of things, but they're very common items in the covenants. A lot of them are so similar. But when you move into these boutique estates, and particularly these higher end estates, you're going to find that when you move into these more expensive states, the covenants are a lot more strict or they're a lot harsher because they need that level of investment to stay up for everyone. So guys, these are just some of the items that are going to require more construction costs that you have to pass on to the client, but it's a result of the block of land they bought. So a lot of times client will blame you and like, why didn't you tell me about this? Why is there an extra charge? Why is that a hidden fee? It's like, guys, these aren't hidden fees. These are just costs that have come up due to the block of land you've purchased. I'll ask you, when you were buying it through your solicitor, did you get your solicitor to check for bushfire? Did you get him to check zoning? Did you get him to check these things? Well, no. Well, guys, these aren't hidden costs. These are just costs that are associated with the land you've purchased. If we look at just what it costs for me to build your house with our base price, our promotions, the few changes you wanted to make, we'll actually see those prices were perfect. The only thing that's changed on your quote here is items to do with the block of land you've purchased. And again, as a builder, our responsibility is to make sure your home is going to be there for 100 years. We can't afford the home to fall or to have a bushfire or a flood zone, so we've had to put these measures in place. Now, obviously, you guys don't want your home to burn down or to flood, do you? No, so these items are required, and that's how you can move the conversation on. But have a study of this, guys. Go and do a little bit more research. If you need any more help or if you have any questions to ask about that, simply text the number on the screen, 0427 915 668. Guys, I'll give you a call and we go through any questions. As always, drop a like, comment your toughest objection. Let me do a video on that. And guys, we'll see you on the next one.